Guys, I'd like to welcome to the podcast our friend Ted Cruz. Ted Cruz has had a distinguished career. He graduated from Harvard Law School. He was a Associate Deputy Attorney General under President George W. Bush, Solicitor General of Texas after that, arguing 9 cases before the Supreme Court. Elected to the Senate in 2012, he's a member of the Judiciary Committee, and he has a new book. It's called Unwoke: How to Defeat Cultural Marxism in America. His website, tedcruz.org. Ted, welcome to the podcast. Great to have you. Talk to me about why you're a senator, you're enmeshed in the process of legislation and dealing with all the stuff that's coming down the pike from the Biden administration, but you took time aside, you felt it important to write a book about a cultural phenomenon that appears to be invading or overtaking our institutions. You use the kind of general category of the unwoke, but talk about why you thought it's important to write this book and do this expose.
Well, absolutely. Dinesh, it's great to be with you. Thank you for having me. Look, I look at where our nation is, and my reaction is the same as yours. I am horrified. I think our nation is in utter crisis. And I think millions of Americans are wondering, how the hell did this happen? What happened for us to go so dramatically off course? And what this book endeavors to do is to explain that. And so the way the book is organized is it focuses on how the left seized control of the major institutions of our nation. And each chapter addresses a different institution. So chapter 1 is the universities, and I refer to the universities as the Wuhan lab of the woke virus. It's where it was invented, it's where it mutated, it's where it spread. And then each chapter goes on from there. So after that, the next chapter is K through 12 education. After that is journalism. After that is government. After that is big business. After that is big tech. After that is entertainment. And that includes Hollywood, movie, TV, music, sports. After that is science and the politicization of science. And then the final chapter is on China, and I lay out China as a central nexus that is intertwined with all of them. And what the book endeavors to do, Dinesh, is 2 things. Number 1, explain how and why this happened, how the radical left from within seized control of these institutions. But number 2, much, much more importantly, the book lays out a clear, practical battle plan for how we take them back. And each chapter ends with how we fight back, laying out the next steps, because if we don't take these institutions back, we are going to lose our country. And I think the stakes are more dire than they had been in our lifetime.
Yeah, I like this very much, and I like the organization of it, because I think you're right that the original, as you say, the Wuhan lab, the incubator, the gain of function research is the university. So let's begin there. If I flash my mind back to when I was in college, and probably were around roughly the same time, institutions like Harvard and Dartmouth were left-wing in that a predominance of the faculty was leaning that way. But I think you remember, and I do, that there were prominent conservatives at places like Dartmouth and Yale and Harvard, and they provided a very important kind of counterbalance. At Harvard, for example, I'll just throw out some names: the biologist E.O. Wilson, the political scientist Harvey Mansfield. There were Alan Dershowitz at that time, not a conservative, but nevertheless a classical liberal at Harvard Law School. So there was this, the universities hadn't been fully taken over. So how would you describe how the university campus went from being leftward tilted to being essentially a left monopoly, in which today you or I would be really hard-pressed? You could go through a whole elite college and be hard-pressed to name a single conservative offering a rival point of view.
Yeah, no, it's an enormous challenge. What year did you graduate from Dartmouth?
I graduated in 1983.
83, okay. And so I was 92 at Princeton and then 95 at Harvard Law School. So 9 years after you. Look, you're right. Those institutions were all left, and in fact, hard left when we were there. But there was a critical mass. There were conservative students who were outspoken. You and I were both very outspoken conservatives on campus. And you didn't face negative consequences. You weren't canceled. You weren't disciplined. It wasn't treated as something that must be silenced. And you're right. There were professors who also, not many, but there were a handful of professors who would present a different view. At Princeton, you had Robbie George, who's my thesis advisor and is one of the premier conservative intellectuals in the country. At Harvard, you had Charles Freed, who had been Ronald Reagan's Solicitor General, and he's someone for whom I worked in law school and was brilliant. You had a few notable conservatives. What I outline in the book is I go back to what Marxism is, and you know it, but some of the people watching your podcast may not be familiar with the origins of Marxism. Marxism began with the works of Karl Marx, and most notably in the Communist Manifesto, where he laid out a worldview that the world is economically determined, and it is in an inevitable conflict. And it's in a conflict between oppressors and victims. And Marx viewed things in socioeconomic terms. And so the oppressors were the owners of capital, and the victims were the proletariat, the working men and women. And Marx advocated for what he saw as the solution, which was the violent revolution of the proletariat to overthrow the oppressors, the owners of capital, and to use government power to redistribute the wealth and power from the oppressors to the victims. And starting in the 1960s, starting in the 1970s, Marxists began to infiltrate universities, particularly elite universities. When I was at Harvard in the 1990s, this is not hyperbole, there were more self-described Marxists, more self-described communists on the faculty than there were Republicans. You had one or two open Republicans. You had dozens of self-described Marxists on the faculty.
Let's take a pause, Ted, because I want to come back into this and go into it in a little more depth. We'll be right back with Senator Ted Cruz. There's nothing worse than hearing about people living in pain. That's why I want to tell you about Keith from Washington and his Relief Factor story. Now, after years of activity, from college football to running a martial arts studio, at age 51, Keith's body felt like it was wearing out. So he gave Relief Factor a try. Keith says he now has, quote, little to no pain in my knees and highly reduced neck pain. He's feeling so much better. He pursued a second-degree black belt. Well, what a story. And you know, on a personal note, that Relief Factors work for Debbie and me, our family, and our friends. So if you're living with aches and pains, see how Relief Factor, a daily drug-free supplement, could help you feel and live better every day. To get started, try the Relief Factor 3-week Quick Start Kit. It's only $19.95. Comes with a feel better or your money back guarantee. Visit relieffactor.com or call 800-4-RELIEF. Again, the number 800-4-RELIEF, or go to relieffactor.com. Feel the difference.